Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is George Kengori. Today I'm going to talk about how to make millions annually from goat rearing, goat breeding. How do you make money from goats? And I'm going to take you through a scenario and how you can be able to get to a point where you're making 1.4 million thereabout net profit annually from goat rearing. So the first thing that we need to talk about before we even start is how to be able to get about this. The first thing that you need to have is an investment. Yes, an investment of around 2.5 million Kenya shillings. 2.5 million shillings. And the money is for this. The initial stock of 12 goats, and these goats are Gala goats or Somali goats, not the fancy goats, because we want goats that can be able to survive in any climate, in any condition, and even when there is an extended time of drought, you do not lose your stock. So you can reasonably care for them, even with limited resources, and be able to still thrive. So we are working with Somali goats or Gala goats. If you come from Kenya, you know this type of goats that we are talking about. So you start with 12 goats, 1 ram, 1 male, and 11 ewes or females. So you are approximating 100,000 is what you will need for the 12 goats. Again, don't buy mature goats. Buy goats that had adolescents. Why do we buy adolescent goats? This is because, one, they are probably healthy because they have not given birth before, and if they gave birth and there were complications, at least those complications do not come with the goats that you start with. They are reasonably healthy, and if you allow them to be able to grow and you have a good feeding and watering and salting regime, then you're going to have goats that are going to mature to a point where they are being productive, and at a point where you're able to control that productivity because you're able to factor in the inputs. So adolescent goats, not small goats that are breastfeeding from your parents, but adolescent goats. A lot of Kenyans make the mistake of buying pregnant females. Why do you make the mistake of buying pregnant females? The problem with pregnant females is this. One, you do not know whether the farm or the place where you bought those goats, there was inbreeding. Inbreeding is where brother and sister get a kid or a baby goat, or father and daughter, or mother and son. You are not sure of the inbreeding. That is why you want to control the genetics, because genetics is one of the things that a lot of goat farms and sheep farms and cow farms fail at, that they do not allow their breeds to have new genes and being able to get rid of systematic genes that are of related animals. So brother and sister will have related genes, and a certain weakness can arise in such goats and sheep. They might be blind, they might have issues with their legs. So inbreeding, you want to control inbreeding, so not pregnant females coming. So adolescent goats and sheep. The reason also for adolescent goats and sheep is because you can be able to look at them and see their health. They are most likely going to be playful, and you're going to see the playfulness to be able to gauge their health, because remember, you cannot be able to gauge too much about their health. The condition of their teeth is most likely going to be good. You can look at their teeth and see the condition of their teeth, the condition of the hoofs. You have a lot more control and a lot of things that you can be able to input and improve their productivity, because you got them from an early age where they are feeding a lot, they are growing a lot, but they also have a lot more potential moving forward. So 12 goats, 1 ram, 11 ewes. Then the other thing that you're going to need is land. And in this case, I'm estimating that you're going to need 10 acres of land that you purchase on your own. The reason I say purchase is because if you're going to set up structures, you do not want 1 year down the line, somebody wants to make use of their land. They want to chase you from their land, or they are selling their land, or whatever happens. This happens to a lot of farmers. When you have invested a lot in a property, you have cleared the land, you have invested a lot in terms of irrigation, all these things, then the owner of the land decides to make use of the land wants to chase you away after they have seen the potential of their land, or they want to chase you away because they are selling the land. You do not want to be held captive by landowners simply because you started an investment to reduce a lot of that cost, because a lot of the cost is in land. You want to reduce that cost, but you risk failing from the start because you have no control over the land and the investments you have already put into on the ground. Just imagine you have dug a borehole, you have dug a well, and then somebody tells you to leave. This is money that you may not be able to recover. So buy 10 acres of land, and where you're going to buy, because goats are browsers and not grazers, you do not need grazing land. You just need bushland where they can be able to browse on the twigs and the leaves of small trees and saplings and some grass to be able to grow. So bushland is fine. So for this you need 10 acres at least. And these 10 acres are estimated to be equivalent to 1 million shillings, so 100,000 per acre. That is not enough. And then I want you to lease another 20 acres. This 20 acres is for additional feed, because remember, there are periods of drought and periods of when you cannot be able to do a lot of things. And this is where you have reserve food. A big problem with most people who do grazing and pastoralism, they do not plan effectively for the animals that they keep. Do you have enough food? Do you have enough pasture for these animals? Or are you going to run out? Planning for feed is one of the biggest problems a lot of people have, and so that is why you have 20 acres of additional leased land, which I am estimating to be equivalent to around 400,000 on the higher end. It could be anywhere from 200,000 to 400,000, leasing an extra 20 acres of land per year. So this land is where you just have pasture. You don't put any capital investments on the land, any investment on the housing, any investment on water, any investment on dams is on your own piece of land. So if the owner decides to sell, you have no money that is fixed to the land. You have no investment that is fixed to the land. So you can be able to move out. Then the other thing, you need housing, around 400,000 shillings worth of housing. A lot of people make poor housing for their goats, but they do not make a point to be able to make good housing. When you have good housing for your goats, you reduce on the mortality, the animals that die off before they get to age of maturity. You are also able to keep them from predators, so they are not eaten by all these animals in the wild that want to eat them. Because remember, if you're keeping them in bushland, there's a bigger risk that there are going to be wild animals that may feast on your animals. And these wild animals mostly feast at night. So if your animals are kept in an inadequate housing, they are going to be eaten. So good housing, 400,000. Then you're going to need vaccines for the year, around 25,000. You're going to be dipping them every 3 weeks. At least every 3 weeks you're dipping them, so you'll need around 25,000 for dipping. So building somewhere they can be able to jump and have, or a way of spraying them, and you can be able to do it every 3 weeks for all your animals. Then you're going to have around 250,000 shillings for labor every year. 250,000 shillings for labor, around 20,000 every single month. So the other thing you're going to have to need is land preparation and dams. You might need to have a dam and do some land preparation. What is this land preparation I'm talking about? You might need to do some fencing. You might need to do some canals so that you can be able to have dikes that can be able to hold water. Because remember, you are feeding your animals on pasture, but you want to have your pasture as healthy as you can. And if you live in a part of Kenya that you are not used to having a lot of rain, which is most places in Kenya, then you want to keep as much of the water that is coming from rain into your land. So you do furrows, and the water comes, it seeps in the ground, and your pasture is always watered. Have some dams strategic. Even if they dry up, it's fine, because a lot of water, the idea is to have a lot of water sinking into your ground. This will allow for recharge of groundwater. And remember, the trees and the saplings and the grass desire a lot of this water. So that is where you recharge your land. So land preparation, fencing and dams coming to around 300,000 or thereabout. Then the other thing that you're going to do is you might need a well. because you may not have a sufficient supply of water. You might need a borehole. You might need to build some water structures, some pipings and things like that. And that I estimate to be around 500,000. So in total, you will need around 2.5 million shillings, 2,500,000 investment